So I was just talking about how I really wanted to introduce your studio here because it's been a bit magical, hasn't it? What did you say, serendipitous?
It has been totally serendipitous.
Serendipitous. So we first met a long time ago, a really long time ago. How long do you reckon? More than 14 or 15 years?
Easily, yeah.
And I was doing some work for you back then as a trainer and you were working a corporate position, and then we met again years later and we did some coaching together.
Yes.
And since then we've become friends.
Yes.
And what happened? We went out for lunch and I talked about wanting to do the podcast. And then did you say...
And my eyes lit up.
I was thinking, is that what happened? And you said,
Oh my God,
I have got a nephew that's wanting to do AV at uni and I'm thinking of creating a podcast studio.
I wanted to record some training for my clients. So I bought the camera and the lights and a few other things. And then talking to Grace and saying, oh, well, we've bought all this equipment. Maybe we should just have a little studio or something. And then you just mentioned you want to do a podcast, and I was like, oh,
Honestly.
this is the universe bringing us together to
Honestly.
both of us mutually create our dreams.
Honestly, it was so wonderful. And it's so wonderful as I sit here. I feel so spoiled. It's been such a pleasure to meet Grayson, who I'm not looking at because it affects the sound, but he's in the room also as our audio man and video man.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Tam. Welcome to 50/50. So it's probably an appropriate time to actually introduce the podcast and the idea behind it. So I never knew I wanted to do a podcast, right? To be honest, I wasn't very pro podcasts because it seemed that everyone was doing a podcast. But then the branding lady I love and I talk about so often, and she never rings me. Feel a bit let down, but she's wonderful, so I can't help but talk about her. So her name's Carly Lyon and she has the Brand in You and she's based in Sydney, and I have a dream where I'm going to get her photographer to do some biopics for me. It's some amazing amount of money to do it, but one day, right?
Okay.
But yeah, so she said this super clever thing. She said, podcasts are just new, right? But if you wanted to write a book, you wouldn't say, I'm not going to write a book. Heaps of people have written a book. And that was like, And then at my talk, where this first idea came about, Ash McGrath from Centre of Gender Equity, wonderful Ash McGrath, instead of putting up a question at the end when people could with using Slido, she put up, if you don't have a podcast, you should. And I thought, should I? And then I thought, could I express this part of me that I want to express, and could it be done with a podcast? I always thought it had to be done in writing or in a book or YouTube videos or something, but never occurred to me about a podcast because I was saying to you before, with podcasts, for me, podcast is true crime.
Yeah.
And that is the only good podcast. And actually Sam Harris is pretty good too with making sense, but you do have to be pretty much a genius. I just don't understand most of what's happening and still enjoy it, as he talks to the world.
I like to take what he says and repeat it to other people at different parties.
That's excellent.
And pretend it was my own.
Right, as long as there's no follow-up questions, that's perfect. I'm not taking any questions right now, but this is what Sam said. He actually has just started a new Substack. Because he wanted to be back in the public conversation without being in the horror of Twitter, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he's just created his own thing, and his first post was about Trump. But let's not take this whole thing into a very dark place, because luckily for us we're a long way away, and unluckily they may still impact us, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, where was I? Podcast, book, why not have a podcast? So I thought, I'm in front of 300 people. Ash has just recommended this idea. I could use this momentum when I'm not a natural promoter. I don't have a big following on LinkedIn because I am very rarely on there, or was very rarely on there. I thought, I could actually give this a go, and it felt really nice and really exciting, and I can actually take myself back to being in that room after I'd finished my talk and she'd suggested that, and feeling this, that feeling like, this might be the start of this thing that I've somehow always wanted to do. And the thing that I always wanted to do, and as the years have gone on, it's got kind of stronger, I feel like I've got this ironic job. I feel like the job I'm meant to do is kind of to be a self-help person, but not by being the person that knows how to do it, by being the person who's done it horribly wrong many times and then learnt things and can tell the story to people in a way where they feel seen, they don't feel bad about themselves because they've had whatever experience, because I've kind of felt everything and been upset in every different way and had not every kind of circumstance in life. I've had a very blessed life actually, but in Western white girl stress land, it's a very particular band. I can go, I can relate to that and I can relate to that. And so if I talk about authentically my experience and then use the wisdom of the world, so it's not my wisdom, it's all these amazing thinkers and intellectuals and spiritual teachers and really angels on earth, how do I both share my story in a way that is both relatable to people but also perhaps suggest something else? And, of course, as I get older, some of the things I've read about I can now actually do. So I still remember I used to be a contract trainer for many years, and I was standing in the bottom level of a very fancy training area in Floreat. People will now know the company I work for. And I was training assertive communication for women, and this is about 15 years ago. And I went into this particular area where people were having coffee, extremely nervous. I was always very nervous before training, had no great self-esteem and not a lot of assertiveness. And I said to the group, assertiveness for women, at about that level of volume. And there was about 100 people in the room, and one of the other trainers said, you're going to have to say that a little bit louder. And I was like, yeah, but I'm really scared. And she's like, you're training assertiveness for women. I was like, I get the irony. Assertiveness for women, a little bit louder. Anyway, I realised I was training stuff I still hadn't learnt, but because I was training it so often, I started to learn it.
Yes.
And then I started to practice it, and now I'm quite often quite authentic when I'm training something. But when I shared about this podcast on LinkedIn, I wanted to share my values, and the first one I wrote was authenticity with an asterisk, because I've always hated if I come across someone that I feel like is putting on a show, like not being authentic, being too corporate, using that kind of speak, or saying, everything's wonderful, like whatever young people say, like, Instagram kind of person. But the problem I had when I actually looked at it and why I gave it an asterisk on LinkedIn is, of course, the reason I've been so obsessed with it is because I haven't been it. And I can be it. Ironically, I can be it in front of a group. I can be it now. I can be it in front of speech of 350 people, not a worry in the world. But if I'm talking to my family or I'm talking to someone close to me, it's very hard, and it's getting easier. I'm starting to practice, but it's been very hard to be at all vulnerable or
Stakes are higher.
right, much higher. And you and I were at a thing together a long time ago now where we went away to do like a vision boarding retreat. And this has happened a couple of times to me where I shared I was upset about something, but I shared it in such a way that I didn't get much of a reaction. And then I lost it and started crying and going, why is no one giving me any help? And my other friend who was there challenged me and said, you did not express that like someone who needed – I feel like she was actually quite strict with me, but it was useful. She said, you didn't express that as someone that needed help. And it happened again. I was doing a fabulous course. Wonderful lady, Cindy Kennedy, does Rise to Shine. I was doing that course in the year of COVID. Again, shared a worrying thing that was going on. And we're on a Zoom call because it was COVID, and the other people in the group laughed. And again, I got shitty and upset and said, hey, this is really worrying me. And they said, we're so sorry. We thought you were kind of telling an anecdote.
Yeah.
Like you told it like a funny story. We didn't even know you're upset. And I said, I'm really upset. And they said, well, you're going to have to look at how you communicate because it's not coming across that way. So how interesting, right? Everyone's got to be authentic. You've got to be authentic. I hate fucking people that aren't authentic. And then I'm really got a very managed brand, right? I'm together. I'm all right. I'll help you. I don't need any help. What else do you need?
Yes, Sam, yes.
Right? Yeah. So it's not authentic at all. And like I said, I'm just eking towards being willing to be vulnerable in a way that means I can actually truly bang on about being authentic. And, of course, to be honest, I probably will give up my campaign because I won't need to rally against everyone else who's being inauthentic. The more authentic I become, I won't have to go, you being inauthentic. That leads me on to something actually I didn't intend on talking about, but it makes me think of this terrible thing when, and this is, I don't know whether you would normally talk about this in a podcast, so I'll just say trigger warning what I'm about to talk about, because I'm going to talk about suicide. So if you'd like to not listen to this part, please feel free to come back and I'll tell you when we come back. But, that happens a lot, and it happens a lot in Australia, and recently a couple of those tragedies happened on the mine site we work on. And both cases, plus another one I heard about on LinkedIn actually, the person was, as people would describe me. So they were friendly, upbeat, out to help everyone, never complained about anything. Yeah. So people got an incredible shock, right?
And they go, I didn't know anything was wrong.
Nothing. They were like the happiest person I knew.
Yeah.
And one of the managers up there put a comment or shared a story on LinkedIn saying, how does this happen? And I thought, well, I know how it happens. How it happens is the person feels like their persona is based on being nice, being generous, being loving, being not a problem for other people. But in these cases, and thank God I've never come near to this for myself, but in these cases they had no way out then, right? They had no one that they felt safe to say, I'm trapped in misery. There was no access. And whilst I'm so grateful to say I haven't got to that point in my life or anywhere near that point for whatever reason, I could very much relate to the sense of I cannot say that I'm not okay. It will not be acceptable for me and how people know me, and I think how I'm valued.
Right? That's the key, because that's the story. You tell
that's
yourself.
the story.
That's the
The
story.
only
That's the
way I'll be
monologue. If I am
valued.
not like this, then no one will love me.
That's exactly
That is the
right.
story.
That's actually hit me when you said that.
Sorry.
It's
I've
perfect.
been doing a shit ton. Am I allowed to say shit ton?
Yeah.
Of work on my stories, and it's very uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable, and
but true, and actually quite freeing to know that that's the story.
I think once you get to like years and years ago, I did a hell of a lot of Landmark, and I say about Landmark, it's fabulous and terrible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some great stuff and not great stuff. But one of the things that we talked about in one of the programs there was, well, what would happen if you weren't like this, or what would happen if you let go of this? And actually, when you get down to it, it feels like you're going to die. Like if I'm not this,
it is.
I'm nothing.
Yeah, and that's what the amygdala says as well. This is just as dangerous. What I'm about to do, my own podcast, is just as dangerous and just as threatening as going to war with someone. Like it's
so scary.
It's so scary for our inner protection. Yeah.
But it's so funny because that brings up a great irony, because you said it's so scary to do my own podcast, but actually this is far less scary for me, or standing up and speaking to lots of people is far less scary for me than doing what a lot of people wouldn't even think is a worry. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. Yeah. Andy, my husband, is turned 50 last Wednesday, and he had some of his friends get together for a party the week before. And I was organising it. And one of the things I had to do was just contact someone and ask them a question about how they wanted to get there. And I was going to text them, and I was with another friend. She said, why don't you ring them? And I said, oh, no. And she goes, why wouldn't you ring them? I go, I don't know what they'll say. And she goes, well, they'll probably just say if they want to get the bus or not. I'm like, I know, but awkward. Yeah. And she's like, wow, I can't believe how big a thing it is for you. And I'm like, for most people, they go, what on earth that you couldn't do that? But other people, you say you want to stand up and talk to 350 people, and they go, I'd literally rather die. Kill me now. So isn't it interesting where your vulnerability actually comes from?
And everyone's story is different.
And what gives you worth, where the risk actually lies.
Yeah. And I can't wait for you on this podcast to unpack that with other people.
Oh, wow.
Because you see your stories through your lens, they see their stories to your, and you are such a great interviewer. And your curiosity, like when you see that little thread, you will pull at it and they will unravel.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to see some beautiful stories told, I think, through that beautiful curiosity of yours.
Yeah, I hope so. I think me being as honest as I can be is the key,
It's the key,
right?
yeah.
That's the key. There was something else I was going to say as well. Being honest, being authentic, talking to people about their stuff. I don't think I can remember it now. It was around this same idea. I'll talk more about the podcast and see if it comes back to me. So 50-50, 50-50 is because...
that's where we started.
right? Life has everything. I'm the full
I'd
spectrum.
forgotten what we were talking about.
I know. We enjoyed it though.
We did.
And that's important. It's not getting anywhere near true crime though, I've got to tell you. We could bump off Grayson and then investigate.
Well, then we could, yeah.
But then we wouldn't
Murder
be
in
able
the
to record it.
podcast.
Like murder. Have you seen Murders in the Building? Only Murders in the
Yes.
Building?
Oh, I love that
Man,
show.
Man,
That is-
Steve Martin's got a...
I love the beautiful, gentle, old-fashioned comedy of it, don't you?
So gorgeous.
Yeah.
He's got a documentary that's just come out on Apple, 2-part documentary. He's such a, oh my God, like that dinner party question, who would you have there?
Yeah.
Oh, he's
You'd
such
have
a
him. Yeah.
genius. Anyway, 50-50. So, and you know what? It's not a podcast name that I can find. Like you'd think it would be so used.
Yeah.
Oops, I just touched the mic. We'll just keep going
We will.
because it's just authentic and organic. I hate the word organic and I've used it
Maybe
twice
Grayson
this
needs
morning.
a buzzer. Like every time we do something wrong, it's bzzz. He does have sound effects on that board.
Hey,
so,
that's awesome. We just put it in, right?
Yeah, he does enjoy beeping me when we do.
Can you press some noise right now, Grayson, as I don't look at you?
We can't hear what he press.
Oh, no. It better not have been a fart noise. I know it was now. I know it was. So,
50-50.
do the talk.
Yeah.
Ash recommends I do a podcast. I think, what do I want to talk about? I think I'll call it 50-50. It's about all of life. I'll interview people and they'll share with me as much as they're willing to. Of course, I have to give people the right to edit, right? Or
Yeah.
to say what they're comfortable
no.
with going out.
Sign the disclaimer as you come in. It's all or nothing. But are you more interested in the 50-50 part, the 50 that they don't show the world?
Yeah, to be honest,
that's
I am.
where the good stuff is.
Yeah. But I do want the 50 that don't show the world, but I would like them to say where that led, so it's got the other side of the story,
Yeah.
right? Because okay, so for me to be a good coach, if I hadn't experienced the negativity or the problems I had, I wouldn't be as good a coach. Or when I speak and make a difference to people, it's because I felt the pain, I felt the fear, I found a solution. And so when they hear me talk about it, they know it's coming from a real place, right? Because I'm like, I couldn't do this thing. I was whispering at assertiveness in for women. Come on, everyone. Please don't hate me, so... Yeah, so it's very interesting. And then Andy said something, my husband Andy said something very useful yesterday or the day before. I was very upset about a particular situation and we were talking about my lack of self-worth. And I said, it feels like, you're asking me to learn Mandarin. I don't know how I'm going to shift this perspective. And he said, you don't have to throw everything out. Everything's okay. You're okay. That's kind of the trick of the whole story, right?
Yes.
So
Yes, it is the trick. We are already okay.
Right.
We make up the story that says that we're not.
right.
And pulling back that veil is it's the awakening. It's the awakened life that I think they talk about a lot on Sam Harris's stuff.
Right.
And you hear the philosophical people talking and they always say it. It's already there. You're already at peace with everything. But it's the story. It's this the ego stuff that we talk about. That hides it all.
Yeah, that thing you just said was really impactful for me when you said we're already all right. It kind of hit me in my chest viscerally because what happens for me is I remember it, forget it, forget it.
And that's the battle.
Right?
That is the everyday battle.
So when I'm doing my mindfulness practice, I can very quickly get into the
Yes.
space of this as appearance in consciousness. When I think about, Sam Harris said this thing once on one of his moments. I recommend waking up to everyone.
It's
just the
wonderful.
best.
It's really the best.
You can do it free for a month, no credit card. It's not dodgy. It's just the best. Anyway, I do his daily meditations and then listen to the many, many, many other things. But he, on one of his take a moments, about a minute of him talking, he says, we spend a lot of time thinking about what's the meaning of life, who am I meant to be, what should I achieve? And he said, actually, in his opinion, what it comes down to is being present in the moment, like actually being in your life, which of course we know for most of us as human beings we pretty much never are, because our head is just distracting us, and like you said, our ego is distracting us. He said, be where you are. I'm paraphrasing, he didn't say it like that. Be where you are and be a good person, right? Experience your life, actually be in it and be a good person. And as I say that, I'm again struck by the beauty and the reality and the miracle of that. And even having been able to access that many times and not access it many times, as soon as you talk about it, because I've done that work, I can access it.
There.
I go, I just have to be in this room with you, with Grayson, having this conversation and actually experiencing the beauty of this opportunity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
I feel like I want to jump over and give you a high five and a hug.
You can do that. I can't look at Grayson to see if we can get permission.
I don't think we'll get approval.
I'll stick my hand out and we'll do gentle high five with no noise. Well done. Well done us. I think we're going to get a good mark from Grayson. So what do I want to do with this? I want to have it, I think, once a month. We might do it more often. It depends on everyone's availability and whether I've got something useful to talk about. But
maybe you could do like a Sam Harris when there's a burning topic and I just read, I'm just picking one of those things. I just read an article about quiet quitting and everybody's talking about it and this is what I think about it.
Yeah.
You could do a random one like that.
Well, that's how it kind of occurs to me, but it occurs to me like things that pop up into my own mind. So, this, like one of the things that we've discussed in a different segment but keeps coming up for me is this little dream versus the big dream, right?
Yeah.
So that's been on my mind. That's
even the way you talk about it.
Yeah.
Little dream, big dream.
Yeah, it's like the little dream's good, but the big dream is
Let's
where the
unpick that
juice
one.
is,
That's
so we
good.
could talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that.
Let's do that next week.
That's quite meta. We can connect that to what we've talked about so far. And then I might bring in a guest and we'll interview a guest.
Yes.
And then we can do tricky communication questions. I can ask
Yes.
anyone on LinkedIn, do they want to share one? They can private
Yes,
message
yes,
me or
yeah.
anything else. Because that is actually, of all the things I think I can talk about authentically,
Yes.
I think I can talk to people about how to communicate because I've got better and better at it and I actually do now walk the talk and that feels like I can give advice without being an arsehole, right? Give advice that I'm not doing at all. That feels like a good note to end it on.
It really does.
Thanks for being here.